The sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica, California. The famous pier was packed. Tourists, families, street performers. Among them stood a young man with a cheap guitar and a dream. His name was Elias, and he was struggling to hit the high notes of Billie Jean. He didn't notice the black SUV idling near the curb on Ocean Avenue. Didn't notice the tall man in a fedora and surgical mask, watching from the shadows. The crowd was thin. Elias was tired. He closed his eyes and whispered into his microphone, "Can anyone help me with this one?" Suddenly a voice whispered back right behind him, "You're flat on the chorus, kid." Elias froze. The voice was high-pitched, soft. It sounded like a ghost from a billion records. Elias turned around, his heart hammering against his ribs. The man in the mask stepped into the light of the street lamp. "Can you sing with me?" Elias stammered, his voice trembling. The mysterious stranger looked at the guitar, then at the crowd. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He reached out and took the microphone. But what happened next didn't just shock Elias, it alerted the secret security detail hiding in plain sight, and that's when things got dangerous. Inside a high-end security firm in Culver City, Los Angeles, a screen flashed red. "Target is off the grid," a guard shouted. Back on the Santa Monica sidewalk, the stranger began to hum. The air changed. The humming wasn't human. It was rhythmic, percussive. The few people passing by stopped dead in their tracks. The man pulled down his mask just an inch. Elias saw the jawline. He saw the eyes. "Start the beat," the man commanded. Elias began to play, strumming like his life depended on it. The stranger opened his mouth and let out a signature the Pier went silent. It was him, Michael. The king of pop was standing on a dirty sidewalk in California, singing with a nobody. But this wasn't a PR stunt. Michael looked paranoid. He kept glancing at the black SUV. "We have to move," Michael whispered between verses. "Why?" Elias asked, still playing. Michael leaned in, his breath cold against Elias's ear. "Because they think I'm already at the airport." Suddenly, the black SUV roared to life. The tires screeched on the asphalt, but it wasn't coming to pick Michael up. It was coming to take him down. The SUV jumped the curb. People screamed, scattering across the 3rd Street promenade. "Run!" Michael shouted, grabbing Elias by the jacket. They ducked into a narrow alleyway behind a luxury department store. The king of pop was sprinting through the trash-lined back streets of Santa Monica. "Why are they following you?" Elias gasped, out of breath. Michael stopped behind a dumpster. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, encrypted flash drive. "This isn't about music, Elias," Michael said, his voice cracking. The lights of the SUV swept across the brick walls of the alley. They were being hunted. Michael looked at the boy he had just met. He had a choice: save himself or involve an innocent stranger in a global conspiracy. "They told the world I was eccentric," Michael whispered, "but they didn't tell them what I found in the archives." The SUV doors flew open. 3 men in tactical gear stepped out. They weren't police. They weren't paparazzi, they were professionals. "Hand it over." "MJ," the lead man growled. Michael looked at Elias and pressed the flash drive into his palm. "Don't go home," Michael warned. But before Elias could answer, a flashbang exploded in the alley. When the smoke cleared, the alley was empty. No SUV, no tactical team, and no Michael Jackson. Elias was standing alone in the dark, clutching a piece of plastic that felt like it was burning his hand. He ran. He didn't stop until he reached a bus station in San Bernardino. He needed to get out of the city. He bought a ticket for the first bus heading east, deep into the Mojave Desert. As the bus moved through the night, Elias looked at his phone. The news was breaking everywhere. Reports of a disturbance in Santa Monica. Eyewitnesses claimed to have seen a superstar. But then the headline changed. Publicist denies Michael Jackson was in California. Footage dismissed as a hoax. They were already erasing the truth. Elias checked the flash drive. He found a small internet cafe in a dusty town called Barstow, California. The air was thick with the smell of diesel and stale coffee. He plugged the drive into a flickering monitor. His heart stopped. There were no songs on this drive. There were contracts, with names of people who were supposed to be dead, and at the bottom of the last file, There was a video dated from that very morning. Elias clicked play. The video showed a room in a private clinic in Encino. Michael was sitting in a chair, looking directly at the camera. "If you're watching this," Michael said on the screen, "it means the duet was a distraction." Elias realized he had been a pawn. But then, the video showed something behind Michael. A shadow moved in the corner of the room, and that's when Elias heard a knock on the door of the internet cafe. The knock wasn't friendly, it was heavy, rhythmic. Elias looked at the door. A man in a tan suit was standing there, silhouetted against the desert sun. Elias looked back at the screen. In the video, Michael was pointing to a map. "The vault isn't in Neverland," Michael said. "It's under the Hoover Dam." The man in the tan suit entered the cafe. He didn't look at the clerk. He walked straight toward Elias. "That's a very expensive piece of hardware you have there, kid," the man said. His voice was calm, too calm. Elias tried to close the window, but the computer froze. "Who are you?" Elias asked, backing away. "I'm the guy who makes sure stories like this stay urban legends," the man replied. He reached into his coat. Elias grabbed the monitor and threw it at the man, sprinting for the back exit. He burst out into the heat of the Mojave. He ran toward a parked motorcycle, the keys still in the ignition. As he roared onto Interstate 15, his phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Check the guitar case," Elias remembered. He had left his guitar case back on the sidewalk in Santa Monica, but he hadn't. He looked at the back of the motorcycle. The guitar case was strapped to the seat. Someone had followed him. Someone was helping him. He pulled over at a lonely rest stop near Baker, California. He popped the latch of the case. Inside, resting on the velvet lining, wasn't his guitar. It was a pair of silver sequined gloves. And inside the left glove was a handwritten note. "The music stops when the lights go out. Meet me at the Nevada border." But when Elias looked into the distance, he saw 5 sets of headlights closing in. They weren't stopping, and they were moving fast. The state line was only 10 miles. Away, Elias pushed the motorcycle to its limit. The wind howled through the Evanpa Valley. Behind him, the SUVs were gaining. He could see the neon lights of Prim, Nevada, glowing on the horizon. "Just a little further," he screamed into the wind. Suddenly, a helicopter overhead turned on its searchlight. The desert floor turned into noon. "Pull over immediately," a voice boomed from the sky. Elias didn't listen. He saw a bridge ahead. A narrow crossing over a dry wash. Standing in the middle of the bridge was a single figure. No mask, no fedora, just a man in a white suit holding a flare. It was Michael. He looked different, stronger. As Elias approached, Michael waved the flare in a specific pattern. The SUVs behind Elias suddenly braked. They didn't just stop. They turned around and fled. Elias skidded to a halt in front of the superstar. "You made it," Michael said. The helicopter above banked sharply and disappeared into the dark. "Why did they stop?" Elias asked, gasping for air. Michael smiled, but his eyes were cold. "Because we just crossed into the dead zone. Their signals don't work here." Michael walked to the edge of the bridge and looked down into the black pit of the ravine. "The drive you have, it contains the list of the people who own the music industry." "And?" Elias asked. "And I'm not on it," Michael whispered, "because I'm the one who owns them." Michael reached out his hand for the flash drive. Elias went to hand it over. But his foot caught on a loose stone. The drive slipped. It bounced off the concrete and tumbled into the abyss. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael didn't move. He didn't blink. He looked at Elias, and for the first time, the boy saw the true face of the king. "That was the only copy, Elias. I'm sorry," Elias stammered. Michael leaned closer, his shadow stretching across the bridge like a giant. "Don't be sorry," Michael said softly, "because now you're the only witness left." Michael took a step toward him. Elias backed up, hitting the railing. "What are you going to do?" Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a small remote. "I'm going to finish the show." But when he pressed the button, nothing happened. Michael frowned. He pressed it again. Then a new voice rang out from the darkness behind them. "The show was cancelled 20 years ago." Michael, Elias turned around, standing. At the end of the bridge was a man who looked exactly like the man in the tan suit from the cafe, but he wasn't alone. He was holding a file with Elias's name on it. "You want to know the real secret?" the man asked. But when Elias looked back at Michael, the bridge was empty. Only the sequined glove remained, caught in the wind. And then the bridge began to shake. Chapter 7. The Ghost of Barstow. The bridge didn't just shake. It groaned like a dying beast. In the middle of the Mojave Desert, California, the world was falling apart. Elias gripped the cold steel railing of the Ivanpah Dry Lake Bridge. Michael was gone. Just gone. The man in the tan suit stepped forward, his leather shoes clicking on the cracked asphalt. "You're looking for a ghost." "Kid," the man said, "but ghosts don't leave footprints. And Michael, he leaves a trail of fire." The man held up the file. In the moonlight, Elias could see his own face on the cover. His address in Echo Park, Los Angeles. His bank records. His mother's phone number. "You think that flash drive was the secret?" The man laughed. "That drive was a tracker, and you just led us straight to the entrance." Elias looked down into the ravine where the drive had fallen. It wasn't a dark pit anymore. A faint blue light was beginning to pulse from the bottom of the bay. Wash, the sand was vibrating. The Hoover Dam was a distraction. The man in the suit whispered, "The real vault is right under your feet." Suddenly, the ground gave way, not the whole bridge. Just the center. Elias felt the air leave his lungs as he plummeted into the blue glow. But he didn't hit rocks. He hit something soft, something synthetic. And as he opened his eyes, he realized he wasn't in the desert anymore. He was standing in a hallway that looked exactly like the corridors of Neverland Ranch. But there was one terrifying difference. The walls were lined with monitors, and every single monitor was showing a live feed of Elias's own apartment. But that wasn't the shock. The shock was the person sitting in his living room, drinking tea, waiting for him to come home. Elias stood frozen in the high-tech bunker beneath the San Bernardino County line. The air smelled like ozone and expensive cologne. He walked toward the screen showing his apartment. The person sitting on his sofa turned toward the camera and smiled. It was the same man in the tan suit who was just standing on the bridge above. "How?" Elias whispered. "He's up there. He's everywhere." Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway hissed open. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a lab coat with a logo that Elias recognized instantly. Sony Music Entertainment, Private Division. "You're late, Elias," she said, checking a tablet. "The king doesn't like to be kept waiting for the second act." "Where am I?" Elias demanded. "You're in Station 0, she replied. "The place where we keep the things the world isn't ready to hear." She led him past rooms filled with gold records, master tapes, and something much darker. Huge glass vats filled with a glowing amber liquid. Inside the vats were shapes. Human shapes. "We didn't just preserve the music," she whispered. "We preserved the performance." They reached a massive iron door at the heart of the facility. The woman scanned her. "Retina. He's been expecting you since that night on the pier," she said. Elias stepped inside. The room was a perfect replica of a 1950s recording studio in Detroit. In the center sat a man at a piano. He wasn't wearing a mask. He wasn't wearing a fedora. He looked young. Too young. He looked like the Michael from the Thriller era. "Do you know why I picked you, Elias?" the man asked without turning around. Elias couldn't speak. "Because your guitar was out of tune," Michael said, hitting a perfect C chord. "And I can't stand a melody that isn't perfect." But when Michael turned around, Elias saw the truth. His eyes weren't human. They were digital. And that's when Elias realized he wasn't talking to a man. He was talking to the world's most dangerous weapon. "I'm an AI." Elias gasped, backing away from the piano. The Michael figure laughed. It was the same melodic, chilling laugh from the records. "No, Elias, I am the interface. You are the key." The walls of the studio began to dissolve, revealing a massive hangar. Inside the hangar sat a craft that looked like nothing from Lockheed Martin or NASA. It was sleek, chrome, silent. "They told you I died in Holmby Hills," Michael said, standing up. "But you can't kill a frequency." The woman in the lab coat stepped forward, holding a silver headset. "The flash drive you dropped wasn't a list of names." "Elias," she said, "it was the final code to unlock the Moonwalk Protocol." "What is the Moonwalk Protocol?" Elias asked, his heart racing. Michael walked toward the chrome craft. It's not a dance, kid. It's a departure. Suddenly, sirens began to wail throughout the underground complex. The monitors flashed red. Breach detected. Sector 4. They found us, the woman hissed. The agency is here. Who? Elias shouted. The people who think they own the airwaves, Michael replied. The roof of the hangar began to retract, revealing the starry sky of the California night. Put on the headset. Elias, Michael commanded. If you don't, they'll delete everything. The music. The memory, you. Elias looked at the headset, then at the glowing craft. He heard the sound of heavy boots echoing in the hallway. Explosions rocked the bunker. He put the headset on. Instantly, his mind was flooded with 1 billion notes. Every song ever written, every scream, every cheer. He saw the future. And it was silent. Wait, Elias screamed. What happens to the world? Michael stepped into the craft and looked back one last time. The world stays in the dark, Michael said. But the stars are going to dance. The craft began to lift off, but a grappling hook slammed into the landing gear. The men in tactical gear burst into the hangar. They weren't aiming at Michael. They were aiming at Elias, the Moether. Hangar in the high desert was a war. Zoned bullets whizzed past Elias's head as he scrambled toward the chrome craft. Grab my hand, Michael shouted over the roar of the engines. Elias reached out. His fingers brushed the silver-sequined glove, but a shot rang out. The woman in the lab coat fell to the ground. The man in the tan suit stepped from the shadows, a smoking silencer in his hand. It ends here. Michael, the man said. The contract is over. The craft was hovering 20 feet in the air. Elias was hanging onto the landing gear, dangling over the concrete floor. Drop him, Michael, the man in the suit yelled, or we bring down the whole mountain. Michael looked down at Elias. His digital eyes flickered. For a second, he looked human again. He looked sad. Elias, Michael whispered through the headset. Tell them the music wasn't the message. I was the messenger. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out a small glass vial, the same amber liquid from the vats. No, the man in the suit screamed. Don't do it. Michael dropped the vial. It hit the floor and shattered. A wave of golden light exploded from the center of the hangar. Everything it touched turned into sound. The bullets turned into notes. The guns turned into instruments. The soldiers began to dance, their bodies moving against their will in perfect synchronization. It was a nightmare in rhythm. Elias felt the headset vibrate. The craft shot upward, tearing through the roof and into the stratosphere. The last thing Elias saw was the California desert shrinking below him. The golden light was spreading. It was covering Los Angeles. It was crossing the Atlantic. The whole planet was starting to vibrate, and then the music stopped. Elias woke up. He was lying on the sidewalk of the Santa Monica Pier. The sun was rising. His guitar was leaning against a trash can. There was no bunker. No craft, no Michael. Just a dream, Elias whispered, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He picked up his guitar case to leave, but as he lifted it, he noticed it was heavy. Too heavy. He opened the latch. Inside wasn't his guitar. It was a folder filled with the same contracts he saw on the flash drive, and on top of the files sat a small, black surgical mask. Elias looked at the mask, then at the crowd of tourists starting to fill the pier. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He had one new message from an unknown number. He opened it. The message was just 3 words, but when he read them, his blood turned to ice. Check your pulse. Elias put his hand to his neck. He felt nothing. No heartbeat, only a steady, rhythmic ticking. Like a metronome. And that's when he saw the black SUV pull up to the curb.